The smell of fresh paint still lingered on the walls when Victor Gray brought the last box into their new home. Sunlight streamed in through the large windows, illuminating the wooden floor of the living room, where Natalie was already arranging the pictures on the mantelpiece. "Can you believe this is our home now?" Victor said, setting the box down and walking over to his wife. He hugged her from behind, breathing in the scent of her hair. Natalie smiled, turning to him. "Our home. Sounds perfect." She froze for a moment, looking at the picture from their wedding, taken just 3 weeks ago. "I still can't believe this is all happening to me." Victor is 36 years old, a successful architect with a growing practice in New Hampshire. Natalie is his young wife of 23 years, having moved from New York City. They met 6 months ago at a contemporary art show, and for Victor it was love at first sight. Natalie, with her delicate features, blonde hair, and shy smile, seemed perfect for him. Their romance developed rapidly, and now they were beginning their life together in the small town of Maplewood. "There's a lot more boxes to unpack," Victor sighed, looking around. "We have our whole lives ahead of us," Natalie stroked his cheek. "In the meantime, I think we should get to know the neighbors." As if in answer to her words, the doorbell rang. A woman stood on the doorstep with a tray covered with a towel. "Hi, I'm Lauren Parker. I live across the street," she introduced herself, holding out the tray. "Brought you a pie," the traditional greeting for new neighbors. "Nice to meet you." Victor shook her hand. "I'm Victor, and this is my wife, Natalie." Lauren cast a quick glance at Natalie, and something in that look made Victor tense. It was as if Lauren knew something he didn't. "We're having a little party this weekend," Lauren said, keeping her eyes on Natalie. "Just neighbors, drinks, barbecue. You should come." Natalie took the pie and smiled softly. "Thank you for the invitation. We'll definitely come." As the door closed behind Lauren, Victor noticed that Natalie's face had become tense. "Was everything all right?" he asked. "Yeah, just tired from moving." She carried the pie into the kitchen, avoiding his gaze. The party at Lauren's was bigger than they expected. The backyard of her house was filled with people, most of whom were neighbors from their neighborhood. "Victor!" a familiar voice called out, and Alex Morgan, Victor's best friend since high school, squeezed through the crowd. "I was beginning to think you weren't coming." "Alex, I didn't know you were invited too." Victor hugged his friend. "Do you know Lauren?" "We've crossed paths a few times at town events," Alex shrugged. "Maplewood is a small town. Everyone knows each other in one way or another." He turned to Natalie. "How are you liking your new home? Are you getting used to life away from the big city?" Natalie smiled, but Victor noticed that the smile didn't touch her eyes. "It's a different rhythm of life, but I like it." Victor showed me all his favorite places. "Not all of them," Victor winked. "I left a few surprises for later." As the evening went on, Victor noticed that Lauren often found herself near Natalie, as if by accident. At one point, he saw them talking quietly about something, and Natalie's face looked worried. When he approached them, the conversation instantly stopped. "What were you two talking about?" Victor asked as he and Natalie walked home after the party. "Just small talk." Natalie took his hand. Lauren told him about the local library where she worked. She suggested that I stop by, maybe even volunteer there. Victor nodded, but something in her voice sounded fake. In the days that followed, Victor noticed that his wife had become even more private. A few times she had long conversations on the phone, but always ended the conversation when he entered the room. One evening, while sorting through the remaining boxes of Natalie's belongings, he found an old envelope of papers. Inside was a stack of medical reports and prescriptions in the name of Nathaniel Green. "Natalie?" he called out. "Who is Nathaniel Green?" He saw her face go pale. "It's my brother," she said at last. "We haven't spoken in years." "You have a brother? You've never told me about him." "It's a complicated family history." She took the envelope from his hands. "I don't want to talk about it." That evening, Victor called Alex and told him about Natalie's strange behavior and the documents they'd found. "Didn't you find it strange?" he asked. "I'm married to her, but I don't seem to know much about her." "Look, buddy, it sounds really strange," Alex agreed. "But maybe she had a complicated relationship with her family. You should just talk to her, give her time to open up." "You're probably right," Victor sighed. "It's just, I have this weird feeling, you know? like she's hiding something. After talking to Alex, he decided to take a closer look at Natalie's things. Going through the photo albums she'd brought with her, he noticed a strange pattern. There wasn't a single picture of her as a child in them. The earliest picture he'd found had been taken when she was about 17, and even in it, Natalie looked very different, with short hair and baggy clothes. That same evening, as Natalie showered, he decided to check her cell phone. Among the recent messages were several from Lauren, and the content of them made his heart beat faster. You have to tell him the truth before he finds out from someone else. Natalie's reply was short. I can't. He won't understand. Victor felt the room begin to spin around him. What was the truth Natalie was hiding? And why was Lauren involved? On Saturday morning, Natalie said she was going to the library to help Lauren with some kind of event. As soon as she left, Victor decided to continue his investigation. In the bedroom, in the far corner of the closet, behind a row of dresses, he found a locked box. It took him a few minutes to find the key to it. Inside, he found old photographs of a young man who looked remarkably like Natalie, some documents, and a diary. On the cover of the diary were the initials NG. Victor opened it and began to read. With each page, the truth became more and more apparent. The diary belonged to Nathaniel Green, describing his journey of transgender transition. The last entry was dated 2 years earlier, around the time Natalie said she had moved to New York City. Victor closed the diary, feeling the rage growing inside him. All this time, Natalie had lied to him. She hadn't told him about the most important part of her life, and Lauren knew. Maybe even Alex knew. Everyone but him. He grabbed his phone and dialed Natalie's number, but the call went straight to voicemail. Then he called Alex. I need to talk to you, he said in a squeezed voice. Now, half an hour later, Alex was at his place. What's wrong? He asked, seeing Victor fumbling around the living room. Natalie lied to me, Victor blurted out. She was born a man, Alex. Her real name is Nathaniel, and she was never going to tell me that. Alex froze for a moment, then slowly lowered himself onto the couch. Victor, listen to me. Did you know? Victor interrupted him. Did you freaking know about this? No, of course not. Alex raised his hands in a protective gesture. But Victor, it doesn't change the fact that she's your wife and you love her. Don't you dare tell me how I should feel, Victor shouted. She's been deceiving me from the beginning. At that moment, the front door opened and Natalie entered the house. She immediately felt the tension in the air and saw the diary lying on the table. Victor, she began, but he interrupted her. Don't you dare say my name. He stepped toward her, his face contorted with anger. You lied to me. All this time you've been lying to me. I wanted to tell you. Tears streamed down her face. I've tried so many times, but I was afraid that you'd... Me what? That I wouldn't marry you if I knew the truth? You're right, damn it. Alex came between them. Victor, calm down. Let's talk this through like adults. But Victor wasn't listening. He grabbed his car keys. I can't be here. I can't even look at you. And with those words, he ran out of the house, slamming the door so hard that the windows shook. 3 hours later, Lauren Parker went out into her backyard to water the flowers. She stood looking at the beautiful roses for a minute, then shifted her gaze to the neighboring property and froze. Among the neatly trimmed grass lay the body of a woman. Her blonde hair was strewn across the ground, and her white dress was stained with blood. Lauren screamed, dropping the watering can, and ran toward the fence. But even before she got any closer, she already knew. It was Natalie Gray, and she was dead. Detective Olivia Burke arrived on the scene 15 minutes after the 911 call police tape had already fenced off the backyard of Gray's house, where forensic scientists were methodically collecting evidence. Burke is 42 years old, and in her 20 years on the force, she's seen a lot of murders, but this one caught her eye. The body of a young woman lay on the grass as if she'd just decided to lie down to rest. If it weren't for the blood soaking the white dress in the chest area, you'd think she was asleep. What do we got? Burke asked the first officer to arrive on the scene. Natalie Gray, 23 years old, found by a neighbor around 6:30. Preliminary cause of death is multiple stab wounds to the chest area. Time of death between 13 and 15 hours. Husband? Victor Gray, 36 years old. We can't find him. Cell phone's off. Burke nodded and moved closer to the body, pulling on latex gloves. She crouched down next to the young woman. Natalie's face looked calm, almost serene. Death had come quickly. Someone knew how to kill efficiently. "Who found the body?" Burke asked, straightening up. "A neighbor, Lauren Parker. She's still here. Officer Johnson's talking to her." Burke walked around the house and saw a young woman sitting on the porch of a neighboring house. Her hands were shaking as she brought a glass of water to her lips. "Miss Parker? I'm Detective Olivia Burke. May I ask you a few questions?" Lauren looked up. Her eyes were red from crying. "Of course." Her voice sounded hoarse. "I can't believe this happened. They seemed like such a happy couple. Tell me what you saw today." "I worked from home all day. Around 4 o'clock, I went out to water the flowers in the backyard and, I saw her." Lauren took a deep breath. "At first I thought she was sick, but when I got closer..." "Did you notice anything unusual today? Noise, yelling, fighting?" Lauren paused. "At about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I heard loud voices coming from their house. I couldn't make out the words, but it sounded like a serious argument. Then the door slammed, and I saw Victor run out, get in his car, and drive away." "What did he look like?" "Furious. I'd never seen him like that before." "And Natalie, did you see her after that?" "No." Lauren shook her head. "I thought she was in the house." Burke made a note in her notebook. "How well did you know the Grays?" "They moved here about a month ago. I met them the next day, brought them a pie. It's a neighborhood tradition. Invited them to a neighborhood party this weekend." "Did you notice anything unusual about their relationship?" Lauren paused again, as if weighing what to say. Victor seemed very much in love. But Natalie, there was something tense about her, like she was always expecting something bad to happen. "Did you talk to her alone? Maybe she shared something personal with you?" Lauren lowered his eyes. "I work at the library. Natalie used to come in there a lot, and we'd talk. She, trusted me with her secret." "What secret, Miss Parker? I'm not sure I should talk about it." "Miss Parker, this is a murder investigation. Any information could be critical." Lauren took a deep breath. Natalie was a transgender woman. She had been born as Nathaniel Green and had gone through a transgender transition a few years ago. She was worried that Victor would find out about it. Burke nodded, keeping a neutral expression on her face. "How did you find out about it?" "I saw her in Boston 3 years ago at an LGBT community meeting. She was still at the beginning of her transition then. When she moved here and I got to know her, Natalie made me promise not to tell anyone. She wanted to tell Victor herself, but she was afraid of his reaction." "And you kept your promise?" "Yes, but I convinced her to tell her husband. I told her that the longer she hid the truth, the worse his reaction would be." "Do you think Victor could have found out the truth today?" "From the way he looked when he left. Yeah, I think he did." Burke left the officer with Lauren and went back to the Gray house. The forensics team was already finishing their work in the yard, and Natalie's body was being prepared for transportation to the morgue. Inside the house, another team was meticulously searching every corner for evidence. "Detective, you need to see this!" One of the officers called out to her from the living room. On the coffee table lay an open journal. Next to it was a stack of photographs of a young man who looked strikingly like Natalie. "It looks like this was the moment the truth was revealed," the officer said. Burke put on her gloves and carefully flipped through several pages of the diary. The entries described Nathaniel's emotional and physical journey to becoming Natalie. "Bag all of this as evidence," she ordered. At that moment, her cell phone rang. "Burke. Detective, we found Alex Morgan, Victor Gray's friend. He was in the house shortly before the time of the alleged murder. Bring him down to the station. I want to talk to him." In the interview room, Alex Morgan looked shaken. His hands trembled slightly as he brought a glass of water to his lips. "Mr. Morgan, tell me about your relationship with Victor and Natalie Gray." "Victor has been my best friend since childhood. We grew up together here in Maplewood. I've only known Natalie for a few months, since they started dating." "When was the last time you saw the Gray couple?" Alex ran his hand over his face. "This afternoon. Victor called me around noon, saying he needed to talk to me urgently. I arrived at his house about an hour later. What did you talk about? Victor found out that Natalie was a transgender woman. He found her old papers and her diary. He was, enraged. How exactly did that rage manifest itself? He was screaming, running around the room. I tried to calm him down, convince him they just needed to talk, but he wouldn't listen. What happened next? Natalie came home. She realized right away that Victor knew everything. He started yelling at her, accusing her of lying. She cried, tried to explain that she wanted to tell him, but she was afraid to. I stepped between them because Victor looked really dangerous at that moment. Had Victor ever been violent before? Alex hesitated a moment. In college, he had anger management issues. He'd once beaten up a guy badly who he thought was flirting with his then-girlfriend, but that was years ago. He's been in therapy since then, and I haven't seen any outbursts like that. Until today. Yeah, until today. What happened after the fight? Victor grabbed his car keys and ran out of the house. He said he couldn't be around Natalie. And you? I stayed with Natalie for a while. She was in a terrible state, crying, saying everything was ruined. I tried to calm her down, told her Victor just needed time to process. How long did you stay in the house? Maybe half an hour. Then Natalie said she wanted to be alone, so I left. That was around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Where did you go after that? Home. I live about 15 minutes from here. Can anyone confirm that you were home? No, I live alone. But I called Victor a few times, tried to reach him. You can check the phone records. Burke nodded and made a note. How would you describe Victor and Natalie's relationship up until today? They seemed happy. Victor was in love like a teenager. I'd never seen him so, elated. Natalie was quieter, more reserved, but they seemed to complement each other. And your opinion of Natalie? Alex hesitated. Yeah, I always thought they'd gotten married too soon. They met and 6 months later they were married. I told Victor he didn't know enough about her, but he wouldn't listen. He said she was the love of his life and he was sure of his choice. Were you jealous? What? No, of course not. I was just concerned about a friend. But your own personal life isn't very successful, is it? Alex tensed up. I don't see what that has to do with anything. Just trying to understand the dynamics of your relationship. Victor has been your best friend for 20 years, and suddenly Natalie shows up and takes up all his time and attention. Look, I was happy for Victor. Yes, I was concerned about the haste of their decision, but only because I wanted what was best for him. Burke studied his face, then changed the subject. Did you know about Natalie's past before today? No, it was as much of a shock to me as it was to Victor. Where do you think Victor might be now? I don't know, maybe at our old fishing spot. It's a lake about an hour from here. We used to go there a lot when we needed to think or talk. Burke nodded and stood up. Stay in town, Mr. Morgan. I may have more questions. Back at the station, Burke found that the patrolmen were still looking for Victor Gray, but so far without success. His car has not been found at the airport, the train station, or in motel parking lots within a 50-mile radius. We have the results of the preliminary crime scene investigation, one of the officers informed her, holding out a folder. No murder weapon was found, but from the nature of the wounds, it was a knife with a blade of about 10 centimeters, possibly a kitchen knife. An empty slot in a knife set was found in the house, matching the size of the knife. Fingerprints? Plenty, but that's natural. It's their house. We're still analyzing the results, but Victor Gray's prints are very clear on the diary and photos. And blood on clothing or in the house? There were traces of blood on the back door that matched the victim's blood type. And this is interesting. Skin was found under Natalie Gray's fingernails, indicating a struggle with her attacker. Burke frowned. This didn't match the picture of the body she'd seen. No obvious signs of a struggle, clothing barely disrupted. Where is Lauren Parker now? Still giving her statement. We're checking her alibi. She claims she's been working from home all day. Her computer shows activity at the time, but that doesn't prove she was on the computer. What about her connection to Natalie? Were they just acquaintances, or was there more to it than that? We're checking their correspondence. Preliminary analysis shows they exchanged messages almost daily for the last month. The tone is pretty close. Burke thought for a moment. She now had 3 potential suspects. Victor, whose rage and sudden disappearance made him an obvious candidate. Alex, who might be jealous and had access to the house at the right time. And Lauren, who knew Natalie's secret and might have a deeper connection to her than she admitted. To complete the picture, Burke decided to have another conversation with Lauren. "Miss Parker, I need you to be completely honest with me. What was the true relationship between you and Natalie Gray?" Lauren looked surprised by the question. "I'm not sure I know what you mean." "Our officers are examining your correspondence. The text messages suggest a deeper connection than just a casual neighborhood acquaintance." Lauren lowered her eyes. "We became close friends. Natalie needed someone who understood and accepted her past, with whom she could be fully herself." "Just friends?" Lauren blushed. "Yeah, I had feelings for her, but I never acted on them. She was married, and I respected that." "But you wanted her to tell her husband the truth, knowing it could ruin their marriage?" "I wanted her to be honest," Lauren objected. "I knew the truth would come out sooner or later, and the longer she waited, the worse it would be." "Were you hoping that when the marriage broke up, you'd have a chance?" "No, I never wanted to hurt her. I just wanted her to be happy and not live a lie." "Where were you between 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock this afternoon?" "I told you, I was working from home. I'm a programmer. I work remotely." "And you didn't go anywhere?" "Just out on the patio for a smoke or two. I could see the Grays' backyard from my terrace, but there was no one there. At least, I didn't see anyone." Burke studied Lauren's face thoughtfully. Something about her story didn't add up, but it was hard to pinpoint what it was just yet. Returning to her desk, Burke discovered new information. Victor Gray's credit card had been used at a gas station 200 miles outside Maplewood, on a road heading north toward Canada. "Do we have any surveillance footage?" she asked. "Not yet, but we've asked. If he really is headed for the border, we need to act fast." Burke nodded and began the process of filing an arrest warrant for Victor Gray. All the evidence pointed to him: motive, opportunity, history of violence, fleeing the scene. But something inside her told her the situation was more complicated than it seemed at first glance. 2 hours later, a report came in that Victor's car had been spotted at a small motel near the Canadian border. The local police had surrounded the building and were waiting for further instructions. "Have them await my arrival," Burke ordered as she packed her things. "I want to talk to him personally." At that moment, her cell phone rang again. "Detective, we have the results of the rapid DNA analysis of the skin from under the victim's fingernails." The lab technician's voice sounded agitated. "It's not Victor Gray, and it's not Alex Morgan." Burke froze. "Whose is it?" "Female DNA. We're running it through the database now, but you might want to get a sample from Lauren Parker." Burke slowly put the phone down. The picture was starting to emerge differently than she'd originally thought. Now, she needed to go back and take a closer look at the quiet neighbor who was probably hiding more than she was admitting. The drive to the border motel took Burke a little over 3 hours. A light rain drizzled through the windshield, turning the lights of oncoming cars into blurs. The detective was used to long drives alone. They helped her organize her thoughts, organize the facts into a logical chain. During those hours, Burke mentally went over the details of the case one more time. The female DNA under Natalie's fingernails was changing the whole picture. Lauren Parker had agreed to give a DNA sample, but had asked for a lawyer, which in itself was suspicious. Meanwhile, the police surrounded the motel where Victor Gray was supposedly hiding. As Burke approached the location, she saw several police cars and a group of officers awaiting her instructions. "Is he in there?" she asked, approaching a senior officer. "Yes, in room 12. We're monitoring all exits. No sign of weapons or escape attempts." "How long has he been here?" "Checked in 8 hours ago, hasn't left the room since. Motel owner says he seemed depressed, even asked for a bottle of whiskey." Burke nodded and headed for the designated room. At the door, she paused for a moment to collect her thoughts, then knocked. "Mr. Gray, this is Detective Olivia Burke from the Maplewood Police Department. We need to talk." There was a moment of silence, then the sound of footsteps, and the door slowly opened. Victor Gray looked like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were red, his cheeks stubbled, and his shirt was stained. "I knew you'd come," he said quietly. "May I come in?" He stepped back, letting her in. The room smelled of alcohol, and there was a half-empty bottle of whiskey and a glass on the table. Do you know why I'm here? Because Natalie's dead and you think I did it. He sank to the edge of the bed, hunched over and looking at the floor. And did you? Victor looked up, pain in his eyes. No, I didn't kill her. Then why did you run away? Because I chickened out. His voice trembled. I said terrible things to her. I yelled at her. I was furious, you know? I felt cheated, betrayed. But when I left, when I got in the car and started driving, I gradually cooled down, and I realized I was being an idiot. But you didn't come back. I wanted to. I really wanted to. I drove a few miles, then I turned around, but on the way back I stopped at a viewpoint to think about it. Sat there for almost an hour, trying to decide what to do, what to tell her. He took a deep breath. And then Alex called. He said Natalie was dead and the police were looking for me. So instead of going to the police, you decided to run? I panicked. I knew what it looked like. Our fight, my leaving. Who would believe me? Tell me what happened in the house before you left. Every detail. Victor shifted his gaze to the whiskey bottle but didn't reach for it. I found her diary, documents, photographs. Found out that Natalie used to be Nathaniel, that she was a transgender woman. I was shocked. I called Alex. He came over. I was, out of my mind. Screaming, telling him that our marriage was a lie, that I didn't know anything about the person I was living with, that she'd been lying to me from the beginning. And Natalie? She came home when Alex and I were there. She saw the journal on the table and she knew right away. She tried to explain that she wanted to tell me, but she was afraid of my reaction. That she planned to do it when she was sure I wouldn't leave her. That she loved me, but I wasn't listening. I just wanted to get out of there. And I did. What time was that? About 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Maybe a little later. What did Alex do when you left? I don't know. I guess he stayed with Natalie. He's always been more sensible than me. Burke nodded, making a mental note. Tell me, Mr. Gray, what do you know about Lauren Parker? Victor raised his eyebrows in surprise. Lauren? The neighbor? Not that much. She invited us to a party when we first moved in. Seemed friendly. Natalie mentioned a few times that they became friends. Did you notice anything unusual about their relationship? Victor frowned, trying to remember. Now that you ask, yes, there was something. At that party, I saw them talking in the corner. Lauren looked, agitated. They were quiet when I came over. And Natalie also used to go to the library where Lauren works. Burke pulled out her phone and showed Victor a picture. Do you recognize this knife? The photo was of a kitchen knife found on the shore of the lake. Forensics found it this morning, and preliminary tests showed traces of blood matching Natalie's blood type. Yes, it's from our kit, Victor confirmed. But I didn't bring it with me. Burke hid the phone. Mr. Gray, I'm here because I found female DNA under your wife's fingernails. Not yours. Not Alex Morgan's. Female. Victor looked confused. What does that mean? It means that maybe I didn't come here to arrest a murderer, but to protect an innocent man. She told him what she'd learned in the last few hours. Lauren's deep feelings for Natalie. The inconsistencies in her testimony about the fact that the knife had been found in the lake near where Lauren liked to fish, according to neighbors. As Burke spoke, Victor's face changed, from disbelief to shock, then to the horror of understanding. I'm going back to Maplewood, Burke said, standing up. Lauren Parker is at the station with her lawyer, but the DNA test results aren't in yet, and I can't charge her without more hard evidence. I'm coming with you. Victor stood up. Mr. Gray, you're still a suspect in this case. I know where Natalie kept the second journal. Victor interrupted her. The one I found was old, but she kept writing in it, and if my hunch is correct, there could be information about Lauren in there. Burke studied his face for a few seconds, then nodded. Okay, but you'll come with me, handcuffed, until your innocence is proven. That's the best I can offer. The drive back to Maplewood seemed even longer. Victor sat next to Burke in the passenger seat, his hands cuffed together. They were silent most of the way, each immersed in their own thoughts. Why do you think she did it? Victor finally asked. If it really is Lauren? Burke kept her eyes on the road. Sometimes people kill out of jealousy, sometimes out of fear, and sometimes out of rejection of something they can't control or understand. I can't believe Natalie's gone, Victor said quietly. And the worst part is that the last thing she heard from me were words of anger and rejection. Burke gave him a brief glance. If it helps you in any way, the medical examiner's opinion is that death was quick. She didn't agonize. What's going to happen next? Victor asked after a long silence. We find the diary. If there's anything in there about Lauren, and if the DNA test confirms our suspicions, we'll charge her with murder. There'll be a trial, and then, life will go on. Not like it used to, but it will go on. By the time they got to the station, it was late afternoon. Lauren Parker had left with her lawyer, promising to be available for further questions. The test results will be in tomorrow morning, one of the officers informed Burke. I want Parker's house monitored, she ordered, and we need to find Natalie Gray's second diary. Forensics was still working on the Gray house. Burke led Victor there, and he went straight to the bedroom. She was always secretive, he said, taking a painting off the wall and opening the small safe behind it. The code was the date we first met. Inside the safe was a stack of documents, some jewelry, and a black notebook. Victor carefully pulled it out and handed it to Burke. I don't want to read this. Not now. Burke nodded and opened the journal. The last entry was dated the day Natalie died. Today everything will change, Victor will learn the truth, and I don't know how he'll react. Lauren warned me again that the longer I wait, the worse it will be. She says she loves me and will accept me for who I am. But I love Victor. I can't imagine life without him. Lauren is pissed about it. She was furious yesterday when I told her I would never leave Victor, even if he rejected me because of my past. She said if I couldn't be with her, I shouldn't be happy with him either. It scared me. Her eyes were blank, unlived. Like I was staring into the abyss. Burke flipped back a few more pages and found other references to Lauren. According to the records, Lauren and Natalie had met before the latter's wedding. Lauren fell in love with Natalie, but upon learning of the engagement, began manipulating her, threatening to reveal her secret to Victor if Natalie didn't spend time with her. It's like an obsession, Burke muttered as she closed her journal. Natalie was afraid of her, but she didn't know how to end the relationship without jeopardizing her marriage. So all this time, Lauren had been blackmailing Natalie? Victor looked shocked. And pretending to be our friend? Looks like it. Burke tucked the journal into an evidence bag. We need to get back to the station. I want you to make a formal statement. But one of the officers was waiting on the porch with a worried look on his face. Detective, there's a problem. Lauren Parker left town. She went off the grid about an hour ago. We checked her house. It's empty. A lot of her stuff is gone. Put out a bolo, Burke responded instantly. Check airports, train stations, rental cars, and send the diary to forensics. We need an official statement that it's really Natalie's handwriting. The next 24 hours became a race against time. Burke barely slept while coordinating the search for Lauren Parker. DNA test results confirmed that the skin under Natalie's fingernails was hers. A day later, forensics found traces of Natalie's blood in Lauren's house, carefully washed away, but still visible with specialized equipment. The picture of the crime became clear. Lauren had come to Natalie's house that day, after Victor and Alex had left, perhaps to comfort her, but actually to take advantage of the situation. When Natalie rejected her again, Lauren lost control. She took a knife from the kitchen and attacked Natalie, stabbing her several times in the chest. She then dragged the body into the backyard, wanting to stage an outside attack, and accidentally discovered it hours later when she was sure Victor would not return. Lauren Parker was found on the third day at the Toronto airport, trying to fly to Europe on a fake passport. She was extradited back to the US, where she was charged with first-degree murder. In her first interview after her arrest, she confessed to everything. I loved her, she told Burke, looking past her. I loved her for real, and she chose him. Even after he rejected her, she still chose him. It wasn't fair. Victor Gray was completely exonerated. All charges against him were dropped, but that was small consolation. He buried Natalie in a small cemetery near their home. The headstone was engraved simply, Natalie Gray, beloved and loved. A week after the funeral, he came to the station to thank Burke. "I'd like to say I find comfort in the fact that justice has been served," he said, looking at the detective with tired eyes. "But the truth is, nothing will bring Natalie back." "And you? Were you able to accept her as she was?" Burke asked cautiously. Victor was silent for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You know what the irony is? If I'd had time to think, really think, rather than react, I think I would have realized that it doesn't change who she was to me. Doesn't change how I felt about her. Natalie was still Natalie, no matter who she'd been before." Burke nodded. She'd seen many tragedies in her career, many instances where secrets and lies had led to irreparable consequences. But this incident had touched something deep inside her, perhaps because of the senselessness of everything that had happened. "What will you do now?" she asked. "I don't know," Victor answered honestly. "Probably I'll start by living one day, then another one, and so on." When he left, Burke sat at her desk for a long time, looking at Natalie's picture from the case. The young woman in the picture was smiling, happy, full of hope for the future, a future that had been taken from her. "There's too much hate and fear in this world," Burke thought as she closed the case file. "Too many people unable to accept those who are different from them, or those who make choices not in their favor." She gathered her things and stepped out into the cool evening air. Tomorrow would be a new day, a new case, new mysteries. But this story, the story of Natalie, Victor, and Lauren, would stay with her for a long time, a reminder of how secrets and obsession can ruin lives, and how important it is to be able to accept the truth, no matter how difficult it may be.